Have you ever imagined this the dream beach house you spent your whole life building, suddenly seized by your own son and daughter-in-law, and then they even plot to declare you insane just to take everything? I was 68 years old, thinking I could finally enjoy peace by the Malibu waves. But one Friday afternoon, I stood at my own front door and heard my daughter-in-law shout, "What is this old freeloader doing here? No room for you, mother-in-law." It was not a misunderstanding. It was the beginning of a battle between an elderly mother and her own family. And today I will tell you the whole story, from the pain of betrayal to how I reclaimed everything with the strength of an American woman who never surrenders. At 68, I still drove my old car from Chicago to Malibu whenever a weekend break came. That Friday was a typical sunny California day. The Pacific Coast Highway stretched ahead like an old friend, winding curves hugging the cliffs, the salty scent of the Pacific Ocean drifting through my half-open window, tall palm trees swaying in the breeze, and the distant ocean sparkling in silver light. Every time I drove this road, a quiet pride rose in my chest. The Malibu beach house was more than just a home. It was everything I had built with my own hands after my husband, the man I loved most in life, died in a terrible truck accident when I was 48. From that moment, it was only me and Brandon, my son, just 22 then, against the world. I worked day and night on the sewing machine, taking orders for costumes from small film crews in Chicago, saving every penny to buy that empty lot overrun with weeds. 20 years later, every brick, every tile, every American rose bush I planted in the garden carried the mark of sweat and sleepless nights. That house was proof of the American dream I had truly lived, that a widowed woman, a seamstress, could still create a solid refuge for herself and her family. As I drove, my phone vibrated. A message from Mr. Reg Harlan, an elderly neighbor in Malibu, a former Marine who often sat on his porch with a coffee cup and waved whenever I arrived. The message read, "There are some strange cars parked all over your garage since this morning. Are you okay?" I smiled, thinking he was probably overthinking. Maybe Brandon had brought friends over for the weekend without telling me. I texted back briefly, "Thank you, Mr. Reg. I am sure it is fine. I am on my way." But as I turned into the familiar driveway, a bad feeling hit me. My garage, where I usually kept my car neatly, was now filled with unfamiliar SUVs and minivans. Thumping EDM music blasted from inside the house, the bass pounding as if it wanted to shatter the glass. I pulled over, got out, and the scene before me made my heart sink. The garden I tended every week, the red rose bushes I grew from seeds, the lush green lawn I meticulously trimmed, was in ruins. Empty beer cans lay scattered, and a few plastic balls rolled across the ground. On the patio, children laughed and kicked balls directly into the rose pots, scattering petals everywhere. The wicker chairs I had bought last year, expensive, durable, beautiful, were covered with wet towels and dirty clothes. I walked slowly toward the front door, the bunch of keys in my hand suddenly heavy, and then I saw her. Kendra, my daughter-in-law, stood on the balcony threshold of the second floor wearing the white apron I had embroidered over 10 years ago with the words, "Home is where the heart is stitched with painstaking care." She crossed her arms and looked down at me with icy eyes. Then she shouted, her sharp voice cutting through the music, "What is this old freeloader doing here? There is no room for you, mother-in-law." I froze for a few seconds. Those words hit me like a slap. Freeloader. Someone who lives off others. Me, the one who had built this house with my own hands, being called a freeloader at my own front door. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice as calm as possible, though my heart pounded. "This is my house, Kendra. I have come here every holiday weekend for the past 20 years. She sneered, a laugh sharp as a knife. She leaned over the railing, looking down at me as if I were a lost stranger. "Brandon said we can use it any time we want. You just show up to complain and ruin our family vacation. So why do not you turn around and go back to Chicago?" Then I realized, not a friend gathering, not a misunderstanding. My house, the only peaceful place I had been taken over, and the leader of the takeover was my daughter-in-law with my own son's consent. I stood there under the Malibu afternoon sun, feeling as if the world was collapsing beneath my feet. But deep inside, something began to ignite. Not blind anger, but a cold, sharp determination. They thought I was a weak old woman easy to drive away. They had made a grave mistake. Because this house is not just bricks and tiles. It is my story, and I will not let anyone take it without paying the price. I stood there under the Malibu afternoon sun, my breath seeming to stop after Kendra's words. The EDM music still blared from inside the house, but now it was just a dull roar in my ears. I had no time to respond when from the front door a group of people surged out as if they had been waiting for this exact moment. First, Melissa, Kendra's sister, stepped out with her 2 teenage sons. All 3 wore swimsuits and t-shirts with designer logos. Melissa crossed her arms, looking at me with a half smile. Behind her came Gloria, Kendra's mother, her silver hair meticulously styled, eyes sharp as knives, scanning me from head to toe as if appraising an old object. A man in a brightly colored Hawaiian shirt, probably Gloria's new boyfriend, leaned against the railing holding a beer can. Next to him was a young woman holding a baby of about 1 year, and finally another man sat calmly smoking in my favorite wicker chair, the smoke drifting slowly in the salty sea air. They looked at me. A 68-year-old woman in simple travel clothes, hair neatly tied, no makeup, as if I were a stray who had wandered into their party by mistake. Gloria spoke first, her voice sharp and full of contempt, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is the famous mother-in-law Brandon keeps talking about. I expected someone more impressive. She looks so ordinary." The group erupted in laughter. Their laughter echoed across the patio, mingling with the distant sound of the waves. Melissa covered her mouth, giggling. The teenage boys nudged each other. The young woman shook her head as if watching a cheap comedy. The man in the Hawaiian shirt whistled teasingly. I felt every sting as if needles pierced my skin. Not from the words, but because they were mocking the house I had built with sweat and tears, mocking the life I had lived that they would never understand. I swallowed the lump in my throat, keeping my voice calm. "Where is Brandon? My son needs to be here to explain this situation." Kendra crossed her arms tighter, standing on the balcony, looking down at me like a queen passing judgment. "He's working, like a real man with real responsibilities, unlike some people. Look around, Lauren. There is no room for you here. Bedrooms are all taken. The kitchen is being used to feed the whole family. And frankly, your presence is just going to create unnecessary drama." I felt my blood rush to my face. Drama me, the one who raised Brandon alone after my husband died, who paid every mortgage penny through sleepless nights sewing, now being called the source of drama in my own home. Kendra continued, lowering her voice, but still audible too. "Everyone, as if sharing a secret they all already knew. We have been looking into some options lately, since you are getting older. Brandon agrees it is probably for the best. You know, to make things easier for everyone." Her words were like a cold blade. Getting older. Options. I knew exactly what she meant. Conservatorship, a legal procedure in California that many elderly people are abused with losing control over their own assets. They were planning, not a whim. This was part of a plan. Before I could reply, Sophia, my 11-year-old granddaughter, Brandon and Kendra's eldest, ran out from the patio. The little girl looked at me with wide, innocent eyes and said in a clear voice, "Why do not you just go to a hotel, Grandma? There is no space for anyone else here." The child's innocent words landed like a final blow. Not because Sophia meant harm. She was only repeating what she heard from the adults. But it hurt more than anything else. My granddaughter, the child I once held in my arms, the one I sent birthday gifts to from Chicago, now looked at me as if I were unnecessary. The group laughed again. Gloria clapped her hands in delight. Out of the mouths of babes, I stood still for a few seconds, shame spreading through my body like fire. But then, from deep within, something stronger than ever rose up. I looked Kendra in the eye, smiling. Not a weak smile, but a cold, calm smile of someone who had decided not to fall. "I understand perfectly," I said, my voice clear, steady. Kendra smiled triumphantly, turning to the people behind her as if she had just won a great battle. They clapped and whistled as if they had successfully driven an intruder from their party. I turned, walking slowly toward my car. Not in a hurry, not running away. Each step was a declaration. I am not a loser. I am merely leaving to prepare for the real fight. From a distance, I saw Mr. Reg Harlan standing on his porch, coffee cup in hand, looking over. He shook his head slightly, a mixture of regret and worry on his face, but he did not cross the street. He knew this was a family matter, and in America, people often respect those boundaries, even when it hurts inside. I got in the car, started the engine. The low rumble drowned out the laughter behind me. As I drove out of the driveway, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. My Malibu beach house, the place I once dreamed of, peaceful vacations with my family, now occupied by people who claimed the right to it. But they did not know one thing: I have never been someone who easily lets go of what I have built with a lifetime of effort. And they were about to learn that lesson, the hard way. I drove away from the house, my own house, without ever looking back. Their laughter still echoed in my mind like needles piercing my heart. I did not cry, not yet. I only felt a deep, lingering pain mixed with something stronger than I had ever felt. I checked in at the Malibu Shores Hotel, a familiar place I had always thought I would use only for a short rest. A room with an ocean view, $320 a night. Money I had never intended to spend, because tonight I was supposed to sleep in my own home on the bed I had carefully chosen from the local furniture store 10 years ago. I set my suitcase down, opened the balcony door, and sat there looking toward the beach house, now brightly lit. From a distance, I could still see the warm yellow light spilling from the living room windows. The music faintly drifted with the ocean breeze. They were partying in my house as if it belonged to them. I sat in silence for a long time, letting the salty wind blow through my hair, and then the memories came back clear as if they happened yesterday. When I was 50, my husband, the only man I had ever loved, died in a truck accident on I-55. It was just me and Brandon, then 22, newly graduated, just starting his life. We had nothing but a small apartment in Chicago and a funeral debt. I remember clearly the first night after the funeral. Brandon sat crying at the kitchen table, and I quietly held a needle and thread, sewing the last shirt of my husband to place in his casket. I told myself I cannot collapse. The boy needs a strong mother. From that moment, I worked tirelessly. By day, I sewed for clients. By night, I took extra orders from small film crews. Costumes for indie films, evening gowns for supporting actors. I saved every penny, refused all luxuries, even skipping coffee with friends. Then I made my decision to buy an empty lot in Malibu. Everyone said I was crazy. A widowed seamstress. How could I afford land on the California coast? But I believed in the American dream I had grown up hearing about. If you work hard, if you do not give up, you have a right to claim a piece of this country. I borrowed from the bank, paying off debts month by month through sleepless nights at the sewing machine. 20 years later, the house was finished. Every brick, every rose bush, every window frame was proof of the resilience of a woman who had lost everything and still stood tall. I picked up my phone, fingers trembling, and dialed Phyllis Ramirez, my closest friend in Chicago, also a widow who had been a nurse for 40 years. 3 rings, and then her tired but warm voice answered. "Lauren, calling so late, is something wrong?" I told her everything. Kendra's insults, the laughter of the group, Sophia's words. I did not cry, but my voice broke slightly toward the end. Phyllis listened in silence, then I heard her sigh heavily. "Lauren, I cannot believe it. But you know my son did the same to me. He convinced me to sign a property authorization because Mom is getting older, let me handle it. Then he sold my condo without asking. I almost lost everything. Only a few $1,000s remained in my account. If it had not been for a lawyer and adult protective services stepping in on time, I would have been living in a nursing home arranged by my own son." My heart tightened. Phyllis, the strong woman who had cared for hundreds of patients, had also been betrayed by her own flesh and blood. Her voice trembled as she continued, "But I fought. I sued. I won. I got my house back. Not because I hated, but because I refused to live as a victim. You too, Lauren. Do not cry. Do not let them see you weak." I stayed silent for a moment, then whispered, "You are right. I will not cry anymore." I hung up, stood up, and looked toward the house, still glowing with light. From here it looked small, but I knew where the real power lay. Not in the bricks and tiles, but in the woman who had built it. A cold, calculating anger began to spread inside me. Not the explosive anger that makes people shout and lose control, but the sharp, clear rage of someone who has lived through poverty, widowhood, and decades of relentless labor. Kendra had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She had underestimated Lauren Smith, the woman who survived the pain of losing her husband, who built a small empire with a sewing machine and iron will. I whispered to myself, steady and resolute like a vow, this is no longer just family drama. This is war, and I am going to fight it the American way, with evidence, with lawyers, and with an unbreakable will. I closed the balcony door, turned off the lights, but in my mind the light had already switched on. Tomorrow I would begin. I would gather evidence. I would contact a lawyer. I would defend what was mine, not out of greed, but out of dignity. Because in this America, the right to property, the right to personal freedom, and the right to live with respect in old age are sacred values that no one has the right to trample. They think they have won. They think I will drive back to Chicago and disappear. They are wrong, because the real storm is only just beginning, and I am at its center. On Saturday morning, I woke up very early, my mind clearer than it had been in a long time, even though I had barely slept all night. I could not let this pass like a nightmare that disappears with the dawn. I needed evidence, clear, undeniable evidence, to prove that what was happening was not a family gathering but a deliberate plan. I put on a simple outfit, pulled a baseball cap low over my face, and drove back to my beach house. When I arrived, the front door was locked. My own front door, the one I had installed the security lock on myself. I rang the bell, heart pounding. Melissa, Kendra's sister, opened the door still in pajamas, hair messy, scowling at me as if I were a trespasser. She looked me up and down and snapped. "What do you want now?" I kept my voice calm. "I just need to pick up a few personal items and talk to Kendra." Melissa sneered, opening the door wider but not inviting me inside. Kendra's still sleeping. "And your stuff, we already bagged it up and put it in the garage so it wouldn't get in the way." Bagged it up, like trash. I felt as if someone had punched me straight in the chest. But I said nothing, only nodded and stepped inside. From the first second, I knew the house was no longer mine. A strange smell hit me. A mix of fast food, cigarette smoke, cheap perfume, and sweat. The living room, where I used to sit reading by the window overlooking the ocean, now looked like a makeshift camp. Air mattresses strewn everywhere, clothes scattered across the floor, soda cans and pizza boxes piled on the walnut coffee table I had bought from the local furniture store. I walked straight to the kitchen. My heart almost stopped. The kitchen, my pride, the place I had designed every cabinet to prepare warm family meals, was destroyed. The gas stove was covered in burned grease, the sink full of dirty dishes smelling sour, my best nonstick pans blackened on the bottom, and on the shelf my collection of fine porcelain plates, each piece a reward to myself after major sewing projects over the years. Now only a few broken shards lying in the trash. I turned and walked upstairs, moving lightly like an intruder in my own home. The master bedroom door was wide open. Gloria, Kendra's mother, was standing inside holding my dresses and stuffing them into large plastic bags labeled Goodwill donation. On the king-size bed, the bed I had chosen thinking one day Brandon and Kendra would visit with the kids, two unfamiliar boys were sleeping soundly. My favorite pillow, the feather pillow my husband had given me, lay on the floor, stained with dirt and juice. I froze at the doorway. Gloria looked up, saw me, but did not appear surprised. She simply shrugged. "Oh, it's you. Don't worry, I'm taking good care of your things. See, I even folded them neatly so they won't wrinkle before donation." Donation. As if my clothes were disposable, meant for charity. I had no time to respond before I heard light footsteps in the hallway. Sophia, my 11-year-old granddaughter, Brandon and Kendra's eldest, appeared at the door holding a cup of milk, eyes wide. She paused as if sensing something wrong. I quickly turned away, pretending to check the closet to avoid her gaze. When Sophia looked away, I slipped behind the main closet, where a secret door led to a small space I called my safe closet. No one knew about this place except me. I opened the door, heart hammering. The space had been rifled through, papers scattered to the floor. My mother's inherited jewelry, the only pieces left from her, were gone. The house deed was crumpled as if someone had glanced through it carelessly. But what made my blood run cold were the papers that were not mine. A stack of legal documents with Brandon and Kendra's names. I picked it up with trembling hands and skimmed it. It was a draft petition for conservatorship, a court request to appoint a guardian over my property and person, citing cognitive decline due to old age. Accompanying it was a fake medical report from a cheap clinic in Los Angeles, only $75, signed by a doctor I had never met. The report concluded I was showing significant cognitive decline, unable to manage valuable assets. At the bottom of the page, a handwritten note in Kendra's familiar handwriting. With this money, we can upgrade to a bigger home in Orange County and send the kids to private school. Just need B to sign and push for temporary conservatorship. The fake doctor already sent the report. I felt as if the world had collapsed. They were not only taking my house, they were planning to bury me alive, stripping me of control over my property, my life, even my dignity while I was still alive and healthy. Conservatorship, a California law meant to protect the elderly, had been turned by my own family into a weapon of theft. I quickly photographed everything with my phone, hands shaking so much I had to hold it with both hands. At that moment, I heard Kendra's voice from the upstairs balcony, talking on the phone loudly and without shame. "No worries, Mom. APS won't suspect a thing if we file for emergency temporary conservatorship." The fake doctor already submitted the report. Brandon finally agreed. He says it's for the kids' future. I stood still, secretly recording the conversation. Every word was a knife twisting deeper. My own son, Brandon, had agreed. For the kids' future. A future built on trampling their own mother. I left the bedroom, moving downstairs silently like a ghost. No one noticed. I stepped into the garage, looked at the piles of trash bags containing my belongings, and left the house without a word. My hands were still shaking as I closed the car door, not from fear, but from burning determination. I drove out of the neighborhood, stopped at a roadside parking spot, and took a deep breath. Then I opened my phone and dialed the hotline for Adult Protective Services, the California agency protecting the elderly. My voice was calm as I reported, "I'm calling to report suspected elder financial abuse and attempted conservatorship fraud against myself. My name is Lauren Smith. I have evidence, forged medical reports, draft petitions, and audio recordings. I need this documented immediately." The operator recorded the information and confirmed an investigation would be opened immediately. I hung up, looking out at the ocean through the car window. The waves rolled steadily like my heartbeat now. Strong, relentless. They thought they could bury me alive. They thought I was a weak old woman, easy to manipulate. But they were wrong. Because I am not just Lauren Smith, the mother, the grandmother. I am an American woman who survived loss, who built her dream with her own hands. And now I will fight, not with tears, but with the law, with evidence, and with unshakable will. The real storm has begun, and this time I am at the wheel. After hanging up with Adult Protective Services, I could not sleep another second. I sat in my car, staring out at the ocean, and promised myself, enough. From now on, I am no longer the victim. I will take control of my own story. Late Sunday and early Monday, I acted immediately. I drove straight to my usual bank branch in Malibu. Upon entering, the cool air conditioning and the smell of freshly brewed coffee woke me up fully. Emily Chen, the young, cheerful Asian-American teller who had been helpful to me for 5 years, saw me and smiled brightly. "Good morning, Mrs. Smith. How can I help you?" Today I sat at her desk, voice low but firm. "Emily, I need to see the balance of all my accounts right now, and I want to freeze any third-party access. In addition, I need an official letter from the bank confirming that I am fully capable of managing my own finances." Emily typed quickly on her computer. When the numbers appeared on the screen, I smiled, my first real smile in days. $128,000. This was the result of 20 years of biting back and saving every pension dollar, every income from late-night sewing orders. Emily noticed the change in my expression and whispered, "Are you okay? You look so strong." I nodded. "Emily, my family is trying to declare me incompetent to take my assets. I need you to print all the statements and help me complete the account freeze today." The young woman widened her eyes but did not hesitate. She printed everything immediately and even called the branch manager to prepare a letter confirming my mental capacity. In less than an hour, I left the bank with a thick folder of documents and the feeling that I had reclaimed a part of the power that had been stolen from me. With the papers in hand, I called attorney Thomas Grant. the lawyer recommended by the bank. His secretary scheduled me for the same afternoon. I walked into his office in downtown Malibu, a luxurious but warm space walls adorned with certificates from the California Bar Association. Thomas Grant, a man around 55 with streaks of gray in his hair and sharp but warm eyes, shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Smith, please have a seat. Tell me everything from the beginning to the end. Do not leave out a single detail." I told him everything. The insults on the balcony, my belongings shoved into trash bags, the draft conservatorship petition, the $75 fake medical report, and the recording of Kendra on the phone. I placed my phone on the desk and played the audio for him. Thomas listened, occasionally nodding, taking quick notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, smiling. "Mrs. Smith, first let me say this clearly. You acted exactly as you should by calling APS and collecting evidence immediately. They have only prepared the draft and the fake report. They have not filed an official petition for temporary conservatorship. This is crucial. With what you have, photos, Kendra's handwritten notes, the recording, and the APS report, we can immediately request an emergency ex parte elder abuse restraining order. The court can issue a temporary order within 1 to 2 days, keeping them out of your house and at least 100 feet away from you." He paused, looking me straight in the eye. "We will also combine it with an unlawful detainer, an emergency eviction for trespass and property damage. Once we serve the 3-day notice to vacate, they must leave immediately. Furthermore, this conduct exceeds $950, enough to charge felony elder financial abuse under California law. If we can prove bad faith, meaning deliberate intent, you can demand double damages. The police will assist in enforcing the order quickly because this is an elder abuse case." I felt a burning energy run down my spine. I leaned forward. "Mr. Grant, I want to do it all. I want the temporary restraining order immediately. I want the 3-day notice to vacate posted at my front door. I want the police to document theft of jewelry and property destruction. I want to file a complaint with the medical board about the fake doctor. And most importantly," I paused, my voice cold but clear, "I want this public. I want their friends, their neighbors, and especially Brandon's boss at the company to see the scandal. I want everyone to know exactly what they tried to do to me." Thomas smiled widely, nodding with respect. "Very well. You are one of the strongest clients I have ever met. Most elderly people betrayed by their children choose to stay silent or compromise. But you choose to fight. We will do exactly as you want. Tomorrow morning, I will file the ex parte petition with the court. By tomorrow afternoon, we could have a temporary order in hand." I stood, shaking his hand firmly. As I stepped out of the office, the Malibu sunlight hit my face. I was no longer the trembling old woman on the balcony laughed at. I am Lauren Smith, the woman who turned pain into power, now using the American legal system to protect her own American dream. I paused at the office door, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, "They thought they could bury me alive, but they just woke a lion they did not expect." And I knew tomorrow when the police and lawyers show up at my front door, they will understand that the game has completely changed. On Tuesday morning, I woke up at 5 o'clock, not because of worry, but because of a strange calm, the kind of calm that comes from someone who has made a decision and sees no way back. I put on a light gray suit I had bought for important occasions in Chicago, a tailored suit that fit my petite frame perfectly, giving me a straight, confident posture. I tied my hair neatly, applied light makeup, and grabbed my leather briefcase filled with evidence, photographs, recordings, bank statements, APS reports, and even Kendra's handwritten notes. I looked at myself in the hotel mirror and whispered, "Today is not the end. Today is the beginning." I called a taxi at exactly 8 o'clock. When the car stopped in front of my house, I immediately saw the group waiting. Thomas Grant standing tall in a black suit, 2 Malibu County sheriffs, a notary, holding a thick folder of papers, and a patrol car parked at the driveway. I stepped out of the taxi's shoulders, straight briefcase in hand. No shaking, no fear, only burning determination. Thomas stepped forward and shook my hand. "Mrs. Smith, everything is ready. The court issued the temporary elder abuse restraining order ex parte yesterday afternoon, effective immediately. They are prohibited from approaching you and must leave the house within a few hours." We also have a 3-day notice to vacate for trespass and property damage. The police will supervise enforcement." I nodded, taking a deep breath. The short blast of a police siren rang out, not loud, but enough to catch the attention of the entire neighborhood. We walked into the garage. From the second-floor balcony, Kendra was holding a cup of coffee, talking and laughing with Gloria. When she looked down and saw the patrol car and the officers in uniform, the cup slipped from her hands, shattering on the wooden floor. The sound of glass breaking rang sharply through the peaceful morning air. Melissa rushed out the front door, phone held high, filming TikTok as usual. Gloria, still in my silk robe, froze at the window. Brandon ran up in his car, parked hastily, and jumped out with a face as pale as paper. Thomas stepped forward, voice clear and professional. "Good morning. I am attorney Thomas Grant, legal representative of Mrs. Lauren Smith, the rightful owner of this property. We are here to serve an immediate, temporary elder abuse restraining order and a 3-day notice to vacate due to trespass, property damage, and attempted financial abuse of an elder." Kendra ran down the stairs, face pale. "What the hell is this? You can't just—" The police raised their hands to signal silence and handed her the papers. I stood still, looking straight into Kendra's eyes. She trembled as she took the paper, scanning it quickly, then looked at me. And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, not contempt. Brandon stepped closer to me, voice shaking. "Mom, we can talk about this. Let's make a family agreement. We'll leave, we'll return everything. Please don't do this." I looked at my son, the boy I once held, the boy I sacrificed everything to raise. My voice calm but cutting. "A family agreement after you called my life's work a waste, after you signed off on fake medical reports to declare me incompetent, after your wife humiliated me in front of everyone and planned to steal my home while I am still alive." Brandon lowered his head, unable to meet my eyes. Kendra whispered into his ear, loud enough for me to hear, "Say she's crazy. Say she's making it all up. The court will believe us." Those words were the last straw. I took a step forward, voice ringing clearly. "No more lies, Brandon. You were there when Kendra called me a freeloader. You stood silent when they laughed at me. You agreed to push for conservatorship so you could sell my house and pay your debts. Admit it. You called everything I'd built a waste." Brandon looked up, eyes red. "Mom, I didn't mean," but he could not finish. At that moment, a van pulled up behind. Reporter Sarah Klein from the Malibu Times stepped out, camera on her shoulder, microphone raised. "I had tipped the local press yesterday. A wise decision." Sarah stepped forward, voice professional. "Mrs. Smith, we received a tip about an elder abuse case involving attempted conservatorship fraud. Can you confirm chaos erupted?" Gloria collapsed onto the steps, sobbing, pointing at Kendra. "This is all your fault. You said everything was handled. You said the old lady agreed." Kendra screamed back, "Mom, shut up and help me pack." The children ran out crying loudly. Tyler, the 8-year-old boy, approached me, eyes red. "Grandma, why are we leaving paradise? We didn't do anything wrong." My heart ached. I knelt down, speaking softly to him. "I'm not kicking you out because you did something wrong, sweetheart. This is my home and your family came here without asking me. Sometimes grown-ups make big mistakes and there are consequences." Kendra lunged, grabbing Tyler's hand. "Don't talk to my kids. You have no right." Thomas immediately intervened. "Ma'am, every word about my client's age and mental state is being recorded as additional evidence of elder abuse and age discrimination." The police began supervising. They gave the family 2 hours to pack, but with the temporary restraining order, they had to leave immediately if they did not comply. Clothes, suitcases, and toys were thrown into cars. Gloria sat on the stairs crying. Melissa still filmed, but her hands shook. Brandon carried the last suitcase, avoiding my eyes. Once everyone was in the cars, Kendra rolled down the window, shouting with a shrill voice, "This isn't over, you bitter old woman. We'll appeal. We'll prove you're senile." I stood on my porch steps, looking straight at her, voice cold and clear. "Go ahead. My lawyer will be waiting. And the court hearing for the full restraining order and permanent eviction is coming soon." The cars drove away, kicking up dust on the driveway. Brandon was the last. In the rearview mirror, he looked at me one final time. I had turned my back. Thomas stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Smith?" I looked at the house. My house finally returned, and answered honestly, tired, but free. Free from pretending we're still a happy family. free from excusing betrayal with motherly love. The police said goodbye. The notary completed the paperwork. Thomas handed me back the keys. Your home is officially yours again. I stepped onto the porch, sitting in my favorite wicker chair. For the first time in a long week, I was alone in my own home. But I knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning of true justice. And this time, I was no longer the victim. I was the victor. After the last cars had driven off, kicking up dust from the driveway, the house suddenly sank into a strange silence. The silence of return, but also the silence of wounds not yet healed. I stood on the porch steps, keys in hand, looking at the front door I had painted ocean blue 10 years ago. For the first time in so many days, I entered my home without sneaking, without fear. But that joy was quickly replaced by pain as I saw the destruction they had left behind. I immediately called Rosa Mendoza, a middle-aged Mexican woman recommended by a friend in Malibu. Rosa arrived with a team of 5 women within 2 hours. When she stepped inside and looked around my house, her eyes shone with deep empathy. Rosa took my hand, voice warm and low. Mrs. Smith, I understand this feeling. My mother was once tricked by her own brother into selling her small house in East Los Angeles, the house she had saved for all her life. He said it was for the old lady's care. When my mother found out, she was left with only a few $100s and a suitcase of clothes. But my mother did not give up. She sued, she won, and she got the house back. She told me, child, a house is not just bricks and tiles. A house is dignity. Never let anyone steal your dignity. Rosa's words choked me up. I hugged her tightly, and then the team began to work. They scrubbed every surface, washed away every stain, and organized the belongings. While waiting, I walked through the house, taking inventory of the damage, a painful but necessary task. In the living room, the hand-embroidered pillows I had spent months making gifts to myself after completing each major sewing project were now stained with red wine, the smell sharp, almost mocking. In the master bathroom, someone had poured hair dye into the pristine white sink, leaving long black streaks that no chemical could remove. The kitchen, where I had once dreamed of family dinners, now looked like a battlefield. 2 of my best French nonstick pans were burned beyond repair. But what broke my heart most were the personal items gone forever. The family photo albums, holding images of Brandon as a child, photos of me and my husband on Malibu Beach before he passed, decades of memories built with love and sacrifice, were gone. My father's wall clock, a gift when I married, not valuable financially, but carrying a lifetime of meaning, was gone too. I stood in the bedroom, hands on my chest, tears silently falling. Not for material loss, but because they had stolen the last fragments of my memories. That afternoon, as the cleaning team finished the final touches, my phone rang. It was Thomas Grant. His voice was full of excitement. Mrs. Smith, I have good news. The doctor who signed the fake reports is now under official investigation by the medical board. They found he signed at least a dozen similar reports in exchange for money. The Los Angeles County District Attorney has decided to open a criminal case for felony elder financial abuse. Their actions exceeded $950, enough for criminal prosecution. More importantly, the effort to secure conservatorship has been completely dropped. Thanks to the evidence you provided, photographs, handwritten notes, recordings, and APS confirmation. The court rejected any filings from them. APS has also recorded the case and will continue monitoring. I sank into a chair, hands over my face. For the first time in many days, I felt true joy. Not gloating, but the joy of justice being served. I whispered, "Thank you, Thomas. I don't know what to say." He smiled gently. "You don't need to say anything. Just keep living, and living strongly. This is only the first step." Less than an hour later, the phone rang again. It was Melissa, Veronica in my eyes, sobbing. "Mrs. Smith, Eleanor, please. We were wrong. Jessica is desperate. Brandon has spent over $15,000 on lawyers, and it is still not resolved. We want to apologize. We want to make things right." I stayed silent for a moment, letting her cry. Then I spoke, calm but unwavering. "Melissa, if you really want to apologize, it will not be over the phone. Tell Kendra to bring all the stolen jewelry to me in person, and bring a sincere apology. Not for me to withdraw my filings, because they are already in the system, but so that you face what you have done." She sobbed in agreement. I hung up and looked out at the balcony. The sea continued its steady rhythm as if indifferent to human tragedy. But this time I did not feel small before the ocean. I felt part of it, strong, resilient, and untouchable. The house was slowly returning to its former state. The strange smells were gone. The stains were cleaned. The belongings were returned to their places. But I knew some wounds would never fully heal. Betrayal leaves invisible scars, and only time can fade them, never erase them. Yet today I had won a great victory. Not with tears or begging, but with evidence, with the law, and with an unshakable will. They thought they could bury me alive, but in reality they had awakened a strength they never expected. 2 days after their family was forced to leave, I was sitting on the balcony holding a warm cup of tea, watching the sun slowly sink into the Pacific Ocean. The sky was painted a brilliant orange. The waves hit the shore steadily, like the heartbeat of the ocean itself, peaceful yet never stopping. I thought about the invisible scars this house had endured and the scars in my own heart. Then the doorbell rang. I opened the door. Kendra was standing there alone. No Brandon, no mother, no child. She wore an old hoodie, her hair tied back neatly, her eyes swollen. She held a small cloth bag in her hands. Gone was the arrogance. Gone was the mocking smile. There was only a woman trembling. "Mrs. Smith. Lauren." Her voice cracked immediately. "I came to return the things and to apologize." I did not invite her in right away. I stood in the doorway looking straight into her eyes. "Come in. But know this, I'm not forgiving you today. I'm just listening." She stepped inside and sat on the sofa in the living room. The sofa I had cleaned of wine stains just yesterday. She placed the bag on the table and opened it one item at a time, hands shaking. "Here are the pearl earrings, the gold watch, the silver coins, and this necklace. I took them. I looked at the jewelry, the pieces I had worn on my happiest days, now lying silently on the table like a belated confession. I did not touch them immediately. I only asked calmly why. Kendra lowered her head, tears falling onto her hands. We were drowning in debt. Brandon lost a lot in bad investments last year. The mortgage was behind, credit cards maxed out, the kids needed school fees, clothes, activities. When he told me about this beautiful beach house you barely use, I thought it was unfair. I convinced him we could use it temporarily. Then the lawyer, this cheap lawyer we found online, said the fastest way to make it official was through conservatorship. He said it was common that you were getting older anyway, and it would be for the family's good. I believed him. I pushed Brandon until he signed the draft. I even paid the fake doctor $75 to write the report. She looked up, eyes red and puffy. I know now it was wrong, horribly wrong. I was desperate, and desperation made me cruel. I'm so sorry, Lauren. I destroyed your home. I hurt you. I hurt the one person who gave Brandon everything. I listened silently, not because I had softened, but because I wanted to hear everything, to see clearly the real person behind the insults and the cruel plan. When she finished, I said only one sentence: take responsibility for what you did, not just words, actions, and tell Brandon the same. Kendra nodded repeatedly, then stood and left. When the door closed, I sat down, hands on my face, not out of pity for her, but because of the pain from my own blood. A few hours later, my phone rang. A message from Brandon. Not a call, not a voice. Just cold lines on the screen. You're not my mom anymore. A real mother wouldn't do this to her own son. I read that message over and over. My heart ached with every word. Not from anger, but from the pain of a mother realizing that the child she had sacrificed everything to raise had chosen to cut the bond of blood for money and bruised pride. I sat there, tears silently falling. Not from weakness, but because I was letting myself feel it all, to never forget. Then I stood and stepped onto the balcony. The sun had fully set, leaving only the last pink streak across the ocean. The Pacific waves still crashed steadily, strong and unyielding. I thought about all the years I had sacrificed sleepless nights sewing to pay the mortgage, refusing to buy for myself, to save for Brandon's college, his first car, the house down payment. I had done everything out of love, the love of an American mother believing that her children were the most precious legacy. But Brandon, he chose his masculine pride, pride wounded by still having to depend on an old mother, over the mother who had given her whole life for him. He could not bear to hear me remind him of what I had done. And so he chose betrayal, chose silence when his wife humiliated me, chose to sign the draft to take away the house I built with sweat and tears. I whispered to myself, voice low but firm, "You raised a son who became a man too proud to ask for help and too weak to defend his mother. That's not your failure, Lauren. That's his choice." I looked out at the ocean, letting the salty wind brush my face, carrying away the last tears. I did not hate Brandon. Not really. I was just sad. Sad for what was lost, sad for the relationship that could not be saved, sad for the son I had believed would always stand by me. But I was also proud, proud that I had not fallen, proud that I had chosen dignity over blind forgiveness, proud that I had defended my own American dream, this house, this life, with the strength of a woman who had survived every loss. The sunset faded completely. Darkness covered the sky, but on my balcony a small light remained on. It was the light of resilience. And I knew, no matter what Brandon said, no matter how much Kendra cried, I was still Lauren Smith, and Lauren Smith never surrenders. In the days after Kendra left, I began to take back control of the house. Not just by cleaning, but by rebuilding the layers of protection I had once thought unnecessary. I called a locksmith to change every lock. I installed security cameras in every corner, small cameras connected to my phone, recording day and night. I hired Maria, a middle-aged woman living near the beach looking for stable work, to look after the house 3 days a week when I returned to Chicago. Maria did more than clean. She became my eyes and ears in Malibu. I told her, "Maria, this is not just a house. This is my legacy. Keep it safe." Then I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and revised my will. I removed Brandon's name from the inheritance of the beach house. Instead, I left everything to the AARP Foundation, the organization that protects the rights of older adults in the United States. If Brandon wanted complete financial independence, as he once said, he could have it. I did this not out of hatred, but because I needed to protect myself and to protect other elderly people from what I had endured. One Sunday afternoon, while rearranging the bedroom, I found an old photograph that had fallen behind the dresser. It was Brandon at 8 years old, sitting on the Malibu beach, the very place back when it was just a vacant lot overgrown with weeds. The boy was smiling brightly, missing a tooth, eyes sparkling with pure joy. I stood beside him, younger, with jet-black hair, proudly holding his shoulder. I held the photo, sat on the edge of the bed, and let the sorrow fill me. How had we come to this point? Where had I gone wrong? Was it because I was too controlling with money, always reminding him of my sacrifices? Was it because I had rescued him too many times, preventing him from learning to stand on his own? I sat there for hours, letting tears fall, letting the memories flood in. Then I wiped my face, looked out at the ocean, and whispered to myself, "Mistakes explain, but they never excuse. Brandon is an adult. He has made his choice, and now he must live with it." I put the photo back in the drawer, not discarded, because I did not want to erase the past, but not left on the table either. It belonged to memory, not the present. 6 months passed faster than I expected. One morning, I received a handwritten letter from Brandon. Not an email, not a text, but a thick envelope smelling faintly of old paper. I opened it and read each line. "Mom, I hope you are well. The children still ask about you. Jessica and I have learned a painful lesson. I know I do not deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that I am truly sorry. Maybe someday we can talk again. I love you." I finished reading and placed the letter on the desk. My heart ached, but not because I wanted to forgive immediately. I did not reply, not out of anger, but because I needed time. Forgiveness is not an obligation. It must come from sincerity, from real change. And I had not seen that yet. That spring, I invited Phyllis Ramirez, my closest friend, to stay for 2 weeks. We planted new flowers in the garden, red roses, purple lavender, yellow daisies, resilient flowers that could withstand the ocean wind. We cooked American-style barbecue on the patio, homemade barbecue ribs, mashed potatoes, fresh corn salad. In the evening, we sat drinking tea, watching the waves. Phyllis asked, "Do you miss Brandon?" Every day, I answered honestly. But I miss the boy I raised, not the man who chose to betray his mother. Do you think you will forgive him? Perhaps. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting or pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness is acceptance and moving forward. And for now, moving forward means keeping distance to protect myself. On my 69th birthday, I received a card from Melissa. Inside was a photo of the 3 grandchildren, Sophia, Tyler, and the baby, smiling brightly by the Christmas tree. A handwritten note read, "We miss you. We hope to see you again someday." I was surprised. Of all people, I did not expect Melissa to make such a gesture. Perhaps she had learned from her own sister's mistakes. I did not send gifts to Brandon or Kendra, but I sent Christmas gifts to the children, coloring books for Tyler, a small gardening kit for Sophia, and a teddy bear for the baby. They had no fault in their parents' actions. They deserved to know they still had a grandmother who loved them, even from afar. I began attending a support group for older adults in Chicago. There I heard stories similar, even more heartbreaking. One woman told how her son sold her house while she was in the hospital. Another had her bank accounts emptied by her children while she battled illness. I listened, and then I began to share my story, not to complain, but to warn and inspire. I volunteered on a hotline for older adults facing family abuse. Every time I heard a trembling voice on the other end, I told them, "You are not alone. You have rights. You have power. Protect your legacy. It is the ultimate American freedom." Because in this country, freedom is not just the right to vote or to speak. Freedom is the right to protect what you have built with sweat and tears, the right to live with dignity in old age, the right not to be trampled by your own family. And I, Lauren Smith, had become a voice for those who thought they had none. The Malibu beach house was no longer just a refuge. It was a symbol of resilience, a symbol that even after betrayal, even after hurt, an American woman could rise, fight, and triumph. And my journey of healing, though slow, had truly begun. A year passed since I reclaimed the house, a year full of changes I had never anticipated. I still lived between 2 places, my small apartment in Chicago and the Malibu beach house. Every time I returned to Malibu, I felt it more clearly than ever. This was not just a shelter, but living proof that I had survived, fought, and won. News came to me through Phyllis, Brandon, and Kendra had divorced. Legal scandals, financial pressure from fines, and lawyer fees, combined with the breakdown of trust between them, all had pushed their marriage to the edge. I did not feel joy hearing this. I only felt a deep sadness. Sadness for lives damaged by wrong choices. Sadness for the children growing up amidst brokenness. And sadness for Brandon himself. The son I once believed would become a decent man. Then one Saturday afternoon, while I was watering roses in the garden, a familiar car stopped at the gate. Brandon stepped out alone. He looked thinner with early gray in his hair, eyes hollow as if he had weathered a storm. He stood a few steps away, not daring to come closer, his voice hoarse, "Mom." I stopped watering, looking at him. I said nothing. I just waited. Brandon lowered his head, voice breaking. "I came to apologize. Not because I want money, not because I want anything from you. I came because I finally understand what I did. I betrayed you in the worst way possible. I let Kendra humiliate you. I signed those papers. I stayed silent when I should have defended you. There are no excuses. I know that now." He lifted his head, tears running down his cheeks. "I don't expect forgiveness today, or maybe ever. I just needed you to know I'm deeply sorry. And I understand why you did what you did. You were right. You've always been right." I looked at the man before me. No longer the 8-year-old boy in the old photograph, no longer the son I had sacrificed everything to raise. He was a stranger trying to find his way back. I was silent for a long while, letting the ocean breeze blow past, then spoke gently. "Thank you for coming, Brandon. Forgiveness takes time." He nodded, understanding that my answer was not a refusal, but a slightly open door. From that day on, I began allowing the children to visit, only the children. They came on weekends, their faces lighting up with joy when they saw me. I taught Sophia and Tyler how to make chocolate chip cookies in the kitchen. My old recipe, the smell of vanilla filling the house. I showed them how to care for the garden, watering correctly, trimming dead branches, planting new lavender bushes. They never mentioned the incident. Perhaps they were told not to. But sometimes I caught Sophia, now 12, looking at me with curious eyes as if trying to piece together fragments of a story she only knew part of. One Sunday morning while we were planting new tomato plants, Sophia suddenly asked Grandma, "Why did you and Dad fight so badly?" I paused, looking at her. Her eyes were clear but held an understanding beyond her age. I sat down beside her gently. Sometimes Sophia, grown-ups make very big mistakes. Your dad and your mom made some mistakes with me and it hurt me a lot. What kind of mistakes? I chose my words carefully. They tried to take something that belonged to me without asking. Something very important to me. This house. Yes, this house. She continued digging a small hole for the plant, thinking Mom said you were very mean to them. I smiled gently. I made them face the consequences of their mistakes. Some people might call that mean. I call it justice. Sophia placed the plant down, pressing the soil around the roots with her small hands. I think I get it. It's like when I take my sister's toys without asking, and she tells Mom. I get mad at her for telling, but really it's my fault for taking them. I hugged her tightly, my heart full of emotion. Exactly, sweetheart. Exactly like that. Those small but honest moments gradually healed the wounds inside me. Not complete forgiveness, but acceptance. I began letting the children visit more often while still keeping my distance from Brandon and Kendra. I did not want to pretend nothing had happened. I only wanted them to know that Grandma's love was still there, even with limits. Another afternoon, I sat on the balcony watching the fiery sunset over the Pacific Ocean. The waves rolled in steadily, the salty wind brushing my hair. I thought about the past 2 years, betrayal, pain, the legal battle, victory, and then the slow process of healing. Forgiveness did not arrive in a single moment of enlightenment. It came bit by bit, through a grandchild's hug, through Sophia's innocent questions, through peaceful afternoons spent alone watching the sea. I will never forget what happened. I do not pretend it did not occur, but I also do not let that pain define the future. Robert, no Brandon, will never be the perfect son I once dreamed of. And I am not the perfect mother he might have wanted. We are two imperfect people, bound by blood and decades of shared history, trying to find a new path amidst the ruins of the old. At 70, I learned that life rarely follows the script we plan. Those we love most can disappoint us deeply. Trust can be broken. Dreams can shatter. But I also learned that the ability to rebuild from the ashes is far greater than we imagine. The Malibu beach house still stands strong and proud on the shore. Its balcony opens to the endless ocean, just like me now. Wide open, strong, and no longer afraid. I was once the little old lady they thought they could easily break. Instead, I showed them, and all older adults watching, that dignity has no expiration date. Dignity has no expiration date. If you have followed my story, the story of betrayal, pain, and a comeback stronger than ever, click the next video now. It is the story of a mother who lost everything in a single hospital stay, and how she reclaimed it all with her own strength. Thank you for listening. Remember, you are never too old to protect what is yours, and you are never too weak to stand up. See you in the next story.